Daniel Kipchumba from Kenya, 59.06. He's done exactly that time twice this year in 2018. Quiet character, but obviously a fierce racer, and both of those performances were wins. Lil Gebrselassie, the 26-year-old Ethiopian, he's a 59.18 performer. Again, very, very strong. He was second in the Dubai Marathon in 2:04 back in January. And Moses Kurong, the 24-year-old Ugandan, will be up there as well. He holds that Ugandan national record. His seventh half marathon, so plenty of experience. Well,
ladies and gentlemen, before you is arguably the best elite men's field ever assembled for a 21K in the world. In bib number 1, please put your hands together for Daniel Kipchumba from Kenya. Daniel comes in as the 4th fastest half marathoner of 2018 and will be eyeing the crown today. Thank you, Daniel. In bib number 2, please welcome Lil Gebrselassie from Ethiopia. With a stunning 59.18 at Valencia last year, he will be looking to take the challenge to others. Thank you, Lil. In bib number 3, Moses Kurong from Kenya. With a strong 59.50 personal best, he is certainly one to keep your eyes on. Thank you, Moses. And now, ladies and gentlemen, to the Indian elite athletes, and in bib number 13, please welcome Gopi T, the reigning Asian Marathon and Mumbai Marathon champion. He will only have the crown on his mind today. Thank you, Gopi. And taking the fight to him to the finish is course record holder Nitendra Singh Rawat. Ladies and gentlemen, Nitendra Singh Rawat, the defending champion, course record holder. Thank you, Nitendra. Ladies and gentlemen, please give all our men, our male athletes, a huge round of applause as they get set to scorch the half marathon track today.
Okay, I want to go to Delhi because I want to run a fast time. So when they come here in shape, and I think Daniel Kipchumba is an absolute example of that. And I can see them attacking this from the start. The pace they've asked for is sensible, but nothing suicidal, I think, to begin with. And then they intend to wind it up and make it quicker in the second half.
They've asked for a tempo around 60 minutes, haven't they? Or just under 60 minutes, I think.
I think around 59:30, which if you think they may then come back quicker in the second half, then that puts the course record in danger. And certainly we know these men are capable of doing that.
Well, two very experienced pacemakers are going to help them out. Ronald Kirui and Alfred Ngaino, both of Kenya, will take out the tempo. Did you used to enjoy having pacemakers with you in races like this, where they sort of lay down the idea is they lay down a nice steady rhythm for the first half of the race?
To be honest, I didn't have that luxury very often, and I think that also the ability to run and know your own body's limits and know how far you can push yourself just running alone is also a good thing.
It looks like they're about to get underway. The countdown now.
And they're off, the elite men, off at the Airtel Delhi Half Marathon 2018. One of the fastest fields we could ever hope for. The timing will be frenetic. The pace will be scorching.
Well, they've certainly gone off very, very fast indeed around that first bend. They're having to lean into it, but they'll settle into a rhythm now. I guess what you hope, Paula, is that, you know, with the massive prize money here, this is just about the richest half marathon race in the world. I think $27,000 for first place, $20,000 for second place, the same prize money in men's and women's races. You really keep your fingers crossed that they don't go for a tactical race, because the prize money you don't get more prize money for running a fast time. It's the same. No. That would be interesting, wouldn't it, actually? What a great idea. You know, if you run outside a certain time, you lose a few thousand bucks.
I mean, you do get that sometimes. You get the time bonuses for running quicker. But I think mostly it's pride on the line here as well. So I think these men, they want to come and they want to run fast. As I've said, they've studied the course. They've probably chosen this race, yes, based on the prize money, but also based on the fact that the Airtel Delhi Half Marathon is known for producing fast times. And this time of the year, that's what they're coming to be able to do. Conditions are good, as we said, out there, so it'll take a little bit of time to get into it. Already we can see probably one of the pacemakers moving away a little bit, and the others maybe a little reticent to go with that, but they will settle into that in the first kilometres or so, and then we will get a good idea of whether they're really attacking that or whether they're racing tactically. But I would argue that can also produce a very interesting race. It's just not going to be a quick race.
Your tactics when you used to race and you were setting world records were pretty straightforward. You didn't have much decision-making to do, did you? You used to, the gun would go and you put the hammer down and that was it. You were off into the sunset. You you were not a tactical racer generally, whether it was track 10,000s, half marathons, marathons. You were very aggressive from the gun.
Yeah, but I think tactical racing, I'd argue, is racing according to your strengths. And my strengths certainly didn't lie in the finishing pace at the end. They lay in making people hurt as much as possible early on. So, yeah, I think they were my tactics that, yeah, maybe didn't look as though there was a lot of thought went into them.
Well, there might be a bit of thinking going on in this men's pack, because those are the two pacemakers, Kirui and Ngannou, and they've got, what, about 15, 20 metres on the main pack. I hope they glance around, slow down a little bit, let the pack regain contact, and then gradually pick the pace up and sort of fool the pack into accelerating. But at the moment, the pack look like they're straining to stay anywhere near these two.
Yeah, I think the danger was that they had to work very hard to actually get to the front around that first couple of 100 metres. So then maybe they've settled into a rhythm, which we'll get an idea when they hit the first K marker coming up, is maybe a little bit ahead of schedule. So then they should start to look around and to see behind. There we go, one look behind there. And now they should start to check back and allow, as you said, that group to work back towards them and then pick it back up to the tempo. It's very hard to hit exactly on the nose a tempo that's asked for, particularly when you're pacing, because you don't have that adrenaline firing, that adrenaline flowing that you do when you're racing. And it's hard then to force your body to hit those targets.
Well, let's have a look at the records that could tumble today. We hope that they'll be getting close to the records at least. They've already gone through 1 kilometre. I believe that we can take a look at the times now, but I know that the course record is 59.06 by Gio Adolo. Will they tumble today? I mean, well, let's take a look at the course map of this Airtel Delhi Half Marathon. They come out of the stadium here and take a couple of right-hand turns before heading up towards the Golf Club, Delhi Golf Club. There's a slight bump there before 7K. Then they head southwards along Rajpath towards the Parliament buildings. At 12K, they head up there to India Gate at Janpath. Then they just follow their steps back through the second half of the course. As you can see, following exactly the same line, a slight bump there just before the last couple of kilometres to the stadium. Well, it is a quick course. There is hardly any undulation in that at all. And I know, Paula, that's the sort of course you would have loved, because you would have been able to get into a nice rhythm. And mentioning that, I think the pacemakers have slowed down and allowed the pack to close up with them. So hopefully now they'll pick it up and get into a rhythm. It's been a little bit undulating in rhythm so far.
Yeah, it has been, but I think they've done absolutely the right thing. They got to that first kilometre, they looked around, and then they checked back a little bit, allowed the pack to kind of settle in behind them. And there we're seeing already some of the main protagonists in there. Aaron Keefley just sitting on the shoulder of those pacemakers, and we'll see now who's really come in shape and who is willing to go with the quicker pace early on. Some looking around and chatting there. I think they're trying to work out who's in that group and who's supposed to be in that group.
2 kilometres, they've just gone through 2 kilometres in about 5:37, something like that. So that's a good, healthy tempo. It means they're moving, what, about 2:49 pace, which is what we hoped.
Yeah, which is the pace that was asked for, and we hoped that that would get moving in the early stages of the race to allow them to pick up in the second half. As we said before, negative splits are easier to make to give you a fast time at the finish and to make it a bit more of a comfortable experience.
Good to see the former Kenyan now running for the USA, Leonard Correa, there between the two pacemakers. He's a 31-year-old. He ran third place here last year in 59.52. That was a massive personal best for him. He's in very good shape. He was second in a big 10-mile race in the USA on the 7th of October, so only, what, a week or so back in 46.5 minutes. It's always really confidence boosting, isn't it, when you come to a race and you've got good recent form?
Yes, it is, and I think probably he went to that Cherry Blossom race, produced the performance, and then felt he wanted to come here and capitalise on that.
Well, there's still a good little pack there, tucked in behind Ngannou and Kirui. So the men's race well on their way, and they're heading for a sub 60-minute time as things stand at the moment. But the women's race is underway, or due to get underway very, very shortly. Let's go back to the women.
Now to the international women's field, and what a field we have. In bib number 101, the 3-time Olympic champion. Please put your hands together for Tirunesh Dibaba from Ethiopia. Tirunesh will be out for a maiden victory here today. Tirunesh Dibaba, thank you. In bib number 102, the current world record holder at the half marathon, Jocelyn Jepkosgei from Kenya. Jocelyn lost out to Tirunesh the last time they met and will be looking to turn the tables on her right here today. Thank you, Jocelyn. In bib number 103, please welcome Ababel Yeshane. Having run her personal best earlier this year, Ababel is set to take the challenge to her two contenders right to the finish. Thank you, Ababel. And now to the Indian women athlete in bib number 121, please welcome Sanjeevani Jadhav. Sanjeevani set the course record earlier at the TCS World 10K 2018 and will be certainly eyeing her colleague's course record here today. Thank you, Sanjeevani. And going up against her in bib number 124 is Parul Chaudhary. With a third place finish here last year, Parul is certainly one of the hottest contenders for the title. Thank you, Parul. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give these lovely women a huge, huge cheer and wish them all the very best for a great run.
As you say, we also have Yeshane and Teferi in there, who can mount a big challenge. I think they've got a lot of potential to go.
And number 103 there, Ababel Yeshane, did that time very recently, that 65.46. Was it in Copenhagen about 4 or 5 weeks ago?
Yeah, she did. She was second to Sifan Hassan when she ran that outstanding 65.13 in Copenhagen. So, and getting quicker with every race. I think that's what's key about her. So let's see if she can go even quicker here today.
Well, Jepkosgei to the left of picture there. She is the world record holder from last year in Valencia. Teferi right in the centre there, a 23-year-old Ethiopian. She's a fascinating athlete making her debut as a half marathon runner here today. Although, funnily enough, she has run a marathon, but she has never run a half marathon. 9th in Dubai back in January in the marathon there in 2:24.11, so she's got plenty of strength, we know that. And that is one of the features of this women's race, is everybody has to be wary of Tirunesh Dibaba's kick, and I wonder if there's not 2 or 3 people there who will make it hard and fast from the start.
Yeah,
they're underway then in this women's race, the 14th edition of the Airtel Delhi Half Marathon Elite Women's Contest, a small but very high caliber field here. Contrasting ages of the top women to the men. Several of the ladies here are Tirunesh Dibaba 33, Jepkosgei 24, Yeshane 27. The average age of the top 5 men in that race, which has been going now for some 12 minutes or so, is 21. It's amazing how many youngsters are coming through in the world of distance running. And we always used to think, didn't we, in the olden days, that when you're in your late 20s and your early 30s, that's when you've developed all the strength, all the training has accumulated. But this generation of East Africans in particular are showing that to be not true.
Yeah, they're kind of turning tradition on its head, because we used to say you work your way up through the distances, you run as fast as you can over cross country and on the track, and then you move to the half marathon and later to the marathon. But now we're seeing people come out and make their debuts at the marathon when they've never run a half marathon, and then jump suddenly into a half marathon from a 5K on the track.
Well, we go back to the men now, 11 minutes on the clock for the men, and Gaino and Kirui still at the front, they're pushing it along. Tucked in behind them there is Belihu, Adamlak Belihu, just 19 years old in the orange vest. The Ethiopian, he's a 59.51 man. He was second here in Delhi last year when he set that personal best. 10th in the World Championships last year at 10,000 metres. He's a fierce track racer as well. And I do like to see that, Paul. I like to see road racers who have got track pedigree who move onto the roads as well. Although there is this generation of East Africans in particular now who come straight to the roads. You get 18, 19-year-olds running world-class times on the roads, and they've never set foot in a track.
Yeah, I think the key thing is you need to have that speed ability there to be able to run sub 60 minutes. You've got to have that ability to run very fast. You don't necessarily have to have done it, and I think that's what's turning it on its head a little bit. But you've still got the likes of Jocelyn Jepkosgei in the women's race, who's not really run anything close to respectable times really on the track, and then comes straight in and sets world records en route to fast times in the half marathon. But I think in the men's race that depth and that strength is much more evident in the numbers clustered in that group there that's running at a very quick pace.
Well, that men's pack is still tightly bunched, as indeed is the men's. They have got male pacemakers with them, even though they had a separate start, so this wouldn't count as a men-only race. There's Jepkosgei to the left of picture, back in about 7th place at the moment, just tucked in there, trying to see Tirunesh Dibaba. Where is Tirunesh at the moment?
I think that's
She's at the
just
back
off
of
the
the
back.
group, just about in about 8th place, just 3 or 4 meters off the back. That doesn't worry me. I saw Mo Farah win the Chicago Marathon, 2 weeks back, and Mo spent quite a lot of the race tailed off the back of the group by 10 or 15 meters, didn't he?
Yes, and I think it's key maybe in an athlete who has come from a track racing background, who has particularly been used to watching the races unfold from the back of the pack and then moving through when it comes down to crunch time in the race.
Back to this men's field, and they're tucked in right behind the pacemakers there. I get the feeling that they are stretching the athletes here. The 13 minutes on the clock, we'll get the 5-kilometre split in about a minute's time, something like that, and that'll give us a much better idea of the tempo that is being laid down. But it's good to see, some 8 athletes, something like that, responding, maybe more than that, behind the pacemakers, the 2 white vests are the pacemakers, then 2, 4, 6, 8, actually about 10 in that pack.
And you can see from the expressions and from their running style as well, there's very little chat going on in there. There's very little looking around at the others, which indicates that the pace is fast and that they're all working hard and they're committed to running quick in this race to the halfway point and then going quicker beyond that.
To the left of picture in the red vest, that's Amdework Walalen of Ethiopia. He's just 19 years old. He's a 59-minute, 50-second athlete. He set that back in April when he won a big race in Turkey, in Istanbul. That was, he made his debut in February this year with 62 minutes exactly. A silver medalist in the World Junior Cross Country last year in Uganda, so he's learning his trade. There's the splits. 5K Paul in 13:53. That is quick. Sub 28-minute pace for 10K, and obviously that will take them down towards the course record of 59:06 if it's maintained.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that might take them even beyond that, but that's phenomenal running, and that explains why they look as though they were running so hard. And I think there are going to be some casualties in that pack. I'm not sure all of these men will be able to maintain this pace all the way through.
You have to admire the way that the East Africans, men and women, race. They tend to be Paula Radcliffe's, all of them. They like to go out really hard and make it an honest test of strength.
Yeah, and it's sometimes hard to race that mentality because they very much run according to feel, and they can sometimes get that very wrong. So you can be trying to keep up with someone who will then just step off to the side and not be able to maintain it to the finish. But we're seeing interesting developments in this women's race already. Stella Chisang is setting a quick pace at the front, and it looks like Tirunesh Dibaba is falling a little bit further back off that.
Yeah, you might be able to just see that at the back of this group, Tirunesh Dibaba, probably about 6 or 8 metres back. We've got to remember that Tirunesh ran the Berlin Marathon not very long ago. She ran 2:18:55 there for 3rd place. And generally speaking, marathon runners take 10 to 14 days break, don't they, after a tough marathon? Maybe longer? Are you saying longer?
Well, I would take 3 to 4 weeks.
But would you have ever dreamed of doing this after 4 or 5 weeks after a marathon, running a world-class half marathon?
No, because you have to consider as well that she ran fast there, and she went to the well, as you would say, and ran a sub 2:20. And usually that takes at least 5 or 6 weeks for your zip to come back into your legs, for you to feel like you've got some bounce, for you to be able to feel like you can compete.
Well, Tirunesh Dibaba just clinging onto the back of that lead pack in the women's race, which does look like it's going very fast. We'll bring you splits as quick as we can. Here's the Indian men in the men's race. They have a separate competition in effect because, of course, they are not yet able to go out at the pace of the leading Africans. 13:53 at 5,000 metres is incredibly fast for that first 5K. Let's go back to this women's race, though, which we think is pretty quick as well. The women have got, about 6.5 minutes on their clock.
Yeah, you can just see the 2-kilometre point in the background there, so they must have been through that, I would guess, in around about 6:10, 6:15, which makes it quicker than the pace that's asked for, which maybe explains why Tirunesh is having the wisdom to sit back off that a little bit, because as they've gone through there, she seems as though she's latched back onto that leading pack.
Yeah, Tirunesh Dibaba, the greatest distance runner in history. I mean, let's just, not fail to emphasise how great she is. She won the world title at 5,000 metres in 2003, 15 years ago. At the age of 18, she's won world cross-country titles. She's got 3 Olympic gold medals. She has the world record for 5,000 metres. You look at Haile Gebrselassie, you look at Paul Tergat. They've been great track racers and they've moved on to the roads. Do you think that makes for a better all-round athlete eventually when it comes to marathon? So you hold the world record of the women's marathon. You were a great track racer. Elliot holds the world record for the men's marathon. He was a great track racer. Do you think that does add a little bit?
I do. I think you need to have that pace. You need to have that ability to run quick, coupled with the endurance, and you have to build up endurance. You have to take time to be able to. The other thing that it brings is just a little bit of maturity, a little bit of wisdom as we look at the splits there coming through across it's a 2.7 chip mat, which is just placed there. So time's a little bit irrelevant there.
Well,
we
can calculate, we can extrapolate from that. 8 minutes 25 at 2.7k. If you add 300 meters to that, so I'd say another 55 seconds or so. So it shows they are moving at about 3:07 per kilometre.
Yes, which is quicker than what was asked for. They were asked for 3:10 pace, which would be around about 67:40, 66:40, 66:50 pace. So they're moving quicker than that, which absolutely puts them on target to take the course record.
They're on schedule for what, about 66 minutes flat, more or less?
Something like that, yes. And given that they might well pick up from that, this is a very, very healthy pace, but we have a lot of women in there who are absolutely capable of running at this pace.
Well, the course record is 66:54, set by the great Mary Keitany back in 2009 here. So what, 9 years ago, the little Kenyan set that 66:54. That's the target for the ladies here, as indeed is winning the race or placing as highly as possible. But good, I guess, that they've got a male pacemaker there who can control the tempo for them and make sure it stays at a nice steady rhythm.
Yes, I guess that will help, and he will be running 2 instructions to be able to hit those pace and just guide the women, maybe hold them back from going a little bit too fast, too early in the race.
Well, in 2017, she went on to finish 3rd in the highly competitive RAC half marathon, Joycelyn Jepkosgei. I spoke to her about how she improved to the world record after that. She said because when she got home, her coach just said, right, you've got to train harder, you've got to get better. There was a lot of pressure on her to improve, and she did that very, very quickly last year. So she broke the world record for the half marathon last year in the April in Prague, and then she improved it in October in Valencia, Spain, by 1 second to 64:51. Now, when you think that sub 2:10 pace for the marathon, there is probably a great marathon in the legs of Joycelyn Jepkosgei. If not 2:10, somewhere in the 2:15, 2:17 range, Paula, I would have thought. She hasn't run a marathon yet. Would you? And she's 24. Would you think it's about time?
I think it's a very individual choice. I think the big thing about moving to the marathon is you have to be ready to mentally commit to it, and you have to want to do it. Joycelyn obviously doesn't yet want to do that, and she very much wants to race over the half marathon, but absolutely that should extrapolate to a very quick time over the marathon distance. It's a little bit unpredictable. You really need to see someone actually race a marathon to know how well they're going to do there, but she has everything in her arsenal to be able to go and produce a very fast time.
Well, they've been running for 13 minutes now, so the ladies here were expecting to get to 5k. The tempo they're moving at, actually around 15:30, something like that, somewhere between 15:30, 15:40, which would put them very nicely on schedule for a course record here in Delhi.
It would, and you can see people working hard already. Is there somebody just dropped off the back?
It is, yeah, one athlete off the back of the pack. And it is hard to see who. Chesang is the Stella Chesang is the pacemaker, who was asked to go out at 3:10 per kilometre, but having a male athlete there as well is certainly a big help. And Diwa Dibaba tucked into the pack now, looking comfortable. And one athlete has got a hard day's running ahead of her. Daba, it is, who's struggling. Tejutu Daba of Bahrain. She's a 68-minute performer. That was in France in September last year. She's a 2:28:50 marathon runner. That was her second marathon, a personal best she ran in Beijing, actually on the 16th of September. And that I've put in my notes, recovered, question mark. She ran a marathon, some 3 or 4 weeks ago. That might explain why she's struggling.
That would
with,
certainly
14
explain.
Minutes on the clock?
Yeah, that would absolutely explain. It's probably pretty brave that she tried to go with that pace in the beginning, and you can see that gap is now just growing and growing, and probably will continue to grow throughout this race, because the pace here is picking up and picking up. The main protagonists are all in there. You've got Jepkosgei, you've of course got Dibaba. We've also got Stacey Ndiwa there. We've got Teferi still in there.
Well, I know at about 13.5 kilometres they pass their hotel, so there's a temptation there for Daba if it's a bad day at the office for her. Here's the Indian ladies going well, and as you can see, is that Yadav, who is leading at the moment, and Parul there. That is two of the main protagonists. Parul, who was third last year, the taller figure in the light blue vest, looking very comfortable there, letting Yadav do the hard work. Sanjivani Yadav pushing the pace at the moment, having their own little domestic dust-up. Back to this front group. There is Dibaba to the left in the all black, with that very high arm carriage. Her arms right up across her chest, almost with her fists, clenched fist, Paula, under her chin. It's a strange action. I did hear a theory a few months back that they believe that if you carry your arms close to your torso and high like that, there's less muscular movement and less, you actually save energy doing it. Have you heard that before?
No, I haven't heard that before,
right,
but it's
we'll
actually quite
later.
similar to the running style of Mary Keitany as well, who tends to run also with the kind of the clenched fists and very high. I think the key thing is that you run in a way that feels natural to you, because that's the way that's going to use the least energy. That is the 5K marker they've just passed through in the background, so maybe it's slowed down a little bit, the pace. That would have been about 15:45, I make.
Yeah, 15:45, give or take. I think you're exactly right. So that works out at what, about 3:09 per kilometre. Still pretty tasty. It's 3:10 was requested. If they're on 3:09 tempo, there or thereabouts, and they can stick with this, and that's a good sized pack again, isn't it? How many athletes there? 2, 4, 6, 8 ladies there, I think, tucked in behind that male pacemaker, and of course Chezang, not forgetting Chezang is a pacemaking herself. And I suppose the good thing for these ladies too, Paula, is that the male pacemaker can go the whole way. He will be able to go the whole distance.
Yes, he will be able to, and he will be able to help them with setting the pace if they need that. I would argue that they can also probably work off each other, and if they want to run fast, they can work together in being able to produce that without the male pacemaker being there. But you can see there, he's actually warning the women to back off a little bit. The pace is good enough. You just need to settle down and also watch that tight turn.
Well, there's the official 5 kilometre split, 15:48, but still very, very quick. Obviously, around 3:10 per kilometre. 15:50 would be exactly 3:10 per kilometre. Stella Chezang leading. Dibaba is there. Teferi is there as well. And Yima and Degefa. Big Ethiopian presence in this women's race. So really good to see that they're all going for it. Of course, one phenomenon that tends to happen when the pacemakers drop out in a lot of men's and women's races, if the pacemakers drop out at about 70% of the distance, is the pack slows down because they start watching each other. They know the prize money is being dangled in front of them. They're like a giant carrot, and they tend to start thinking less about the time than their position, and it becomes a cat and mouse game. And all the hard work of the first 15 kilometres, let's say, in a race like this, if the pacemakers drop out, gets wasted to some degree.
Yes, it can do, but then they can also choose to keep the pace moving, and that's when it's going to be interesting who is left in the pack at that point when the pacemakers step aside, because I would think then it would be in the likes of Jocelyn Jepkoskai's interest to keep the pace moving and to be able to keep pushing on to make it hurt as much as possible for Tirunesh Dibaba. She wants to try and burn off that finish.
Well, if they keep moving at this tempo, they're heading for 66:30, which would break Mary Keitany's course record by nearly half a minute. So it's building nicely. It's looking really promising, isn't it? Only 18 minutes on the clock. They're not nowhere near third distance as yet. Back to this elite women's race where the pack is still tucked together. I'm just beginning to wonder whether or not Tirunesh Dibaba is struggling to hang on to the back of this group, Paula.
I think she's certainly giving that impression. Whether she's deliberately giving that impression, I think we'll find out as this race builds and as we get further into it. She does seem to, when the pace accelerates, just allow them to move away and then gradually work her way back onto the pack. But as you said earlier, we saw that from Mo Farah, and he turned out to win the Chicago Marathon a couple of weeks ago by allowing the same thing to happen. Sometimes people can use a little bit too much energy too early in the race by trying to push the pace on, and by sitting at the back and just watching it develop, you save that energy for later in the race.
So Tirunesh Dibaba, nicknamed the baby-faced killer. I think it's the baby-faced destroyer, actually. It doesn't really matter, does it? She kills them, she destroys them, she obliterates them, and has done for 15 years and more. 3 Olympic gold medals, 9 world titles, 3 silvers and 3 bronze medals. She's very rarely out of the medals. She's to the left of picture in the all black is Tirunesh Dibaba. In 2014, she made her marathon debut, finishing 3rd in the London Marathon. She then came back last year and finished in 2nd place in this, and she's the 3rd fastest athlete in history now, Dibaba. She ran quickly in her first couple of marathons, and it would suggest there's more to come from Dibaba.
Yes, I would think there would be more to come. I would also maybe argue that had she gone to the marathon a little bit sooner, she could have maybe run even faster, because she did move at a stage where she'd already raced a lot. But she is learning, she's moving forward with each race. She's learned, I think, the hard way in the last couple, that if you go out too fast at halfway, it's hard to maintain that, and that's what culminated in a DNF in London Marathon this year. So she learned from that and then came back and was able to still run another sub 2:19 clocking in Berlin. But that must still be in her legs today. No matter how talented Tirunesh Dibaba is, she must still feel that, and she hasn't come in with the same freshness and with the same preparation as the likes of Jocelyn Jepkosgei and also Sembera Tefera, who we've talked about, and Yeshine, who has been running faster and faster with each of those, and certainly that 65:40 that she ran in Copenhagen will have given her a big confidence boost, and for her to be able to beat her idol in Tirunesh Dibaba, that would be something huge.
Well, they went through 7K just now in 22:12, according to my clock. That means they covered the 2K from 5K to 7K in 6:24. So they've slowed a little bit. That means they're moving around 3:11, 3:12 tempo. And while 2 or 3 seconds over a kilometre might not sound a lot, it is significant, isn't it, Paula? Because it accumulates over 3 or 4 kilometres, 5 kilometres. All of a sudden, you're talking about 10, 15 seconds.
Yes, you are. I mean, it's different in a course where there are undulations, but here there aren't really any big undulations, and what there are around about 5 kilometres, I think. So when it slows down and there isn't really a reason for that, then that tends to be indicative that people are just sitting back off the pace. If there's a hill, then it's obvious they're going to pick it up again when they get away from the hill.
Well, towards the latter part of the course, there is that slight bump, that slight rise, but the coming down from the rise with about 2 or 3 kilometres to go does sort of kick-start them into the latter stages. So here are the splits at 7K, 22:11. Yeah, that's more or less what I got. Jepkosgei, 22:11. Teferi is there. She's the dark horse for me, perhaps making her debut as a half-marathon racer. Zeynep Yima. And who is that dropping off the back of the group?
I think that's De Geefer, and she's lost a lot of ground in the last, well, a couple of 100 metres really, because she was not far. She was just off the back of the pack through 7K, and it looks like that's her now, and that gap is growing and growing.
Well, to the extreme left of picture is that Workness De Geefer, the 27-year-old Ethiopian who was the champion here at the Airtel Delhi Half Marathon in 2016. She was 5th last year, and as she comes through, she has been dropped before halfway. Yes, it is De Geefer. This is going to be a very tough one for her. She's run 6 half marathons a year in 2014, 2015 and 2016. She's very much a half marathon specialist. She's been under 70 minutes in her last 11 half marathons. And she might well go under 70 minutes today, Paula, because that's sort of the benchmark of world class. But if the pack are moving at, let's say, 66 minutes flat pace or 66:30, no wonder she's struggling.
Exactly. Even on a good day, she'd probably be struggling to go with the pace. And so sensibly, she's just realised this is too fast for me today. I need to back off to be able to maintain my pace through to the finish. And we may well see her yet come through and pick off others as they drop off this leading group.
Did you ever get yourself in a situation like this where you were in a pack and you felt obliged almost to stay with the pack, determined to stay with the pack, but you knew deep down inside you couldn't hang with it, that you would eventually have to drop away from the tempo? Or did
yes, towards the end of my career. But I think I probably more often in the beginning just felt that I was in the pack and I needed to wind it up because there were people there who I needed to make it quicker so that they couldn't stay with it. But yeah, I did a couple of times run that. It's a dangerous way to race though, because you know you're going to be in pain in the second half of that race and you're going to be really hanging on.
You're the wrong person to ask, really, because you were so strong when you were at your peak. You were usually the person turning the screw on the rest of the pack. So I'll say it for the rest of the planet. Yes, if you go out too fast to halfway, you're going to have a horrible second half. Well, they're still going well. I got them at 8 kilometres at about 25:22. This leading women's pack. And here's the leading men's pack, and they are really shifting again. And it looks to me like Kifle has kicked in hard there. Aaron Kifle, the 20-year-old Eritrean. He's only a 60-minute man, 60:31 his personal best, but he did win the World Championship bronze medal over half marathon in Valencia back in March. That was his debut, and it's his only one he's run so far. Bizarrely, he ran in the World Championships, his first ever half marathon, got a bronze medal. So it does make you wonder if there's a lot more to come from Keighley.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot more to come. I think his track speed shows that as well. 13:07 over 5 kilometres is something that a lot of these men will struggle to match.
Well, this elite pack has had a couple of athletes drop off the back of it over the last 10 or 15 minutes in the women's race. Interesting to see Joycelyn Jepkosgei there, tucked in behind the pacemakers in the white vest. You can't quite see her at the moment. She's behind Chesang. She's a very solid runner, isn't she? She's not long and lean like you would expect. But having said that, actually, Tirunesh Dibaba is solidly built for a distance racer. The opposite of Ayana, for example.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you see them stood next to each other, then you would maybe say that Tirunesh is solid. I'm not sure anybody else stood next to Tirunesh would ever call her solid, but I think it's more strength and maybe demonstrates why she is able to have that range of running so quick from 5,000 metres and over the marathon, because she has the power there. She's like a little power pack, and I think Joycelyn Jepkosgei even more so, may be why she might not transfer to the marathon, because she's that little bit heavier to go the full distance for the marathon. But we'll see. That's kind of putting people in boxes before they even get there.
Beautiful shot of India Gate there in the background. We've done a couple of runs. I've had a couple of runs around that in the last few days. It's always heaving with Indians who want to come and have a look at that and pay their respects. I think it's built in commemoration of the Indian war dead over the years, the India Gate. It's absolutely massive. If you know the Arc de Triomphe, think that in terms of scale. It's huge in the background there. Well, Ballyhoo running very aggressively here. They went into the second half of their race here in this men's contest. 13.4 kilometres, 38:02 in this men's race. 38:02 for the leader. And that's at 13.4 kilometres. We'll try and extrapolate exactly what that means in terms of overall finishing time. But it looks to me, Paula, like they have been taking turns at the front and pushing the pace very hard. Keighley was at the front a couple of minutes ago and looked like he was attacking. Now Ballyhoo's gone to the fore.
Yeah, Ballyhoo has been to the fore for a lot of this race, and certainly it looks like maybe he and Keighley are working together a little bit to keep the pace moving, and it does seem to be causing casualties further back. You can see Daniel Kipchumba, one of the favourites that we talked about coming into the race, is just there in the white on the far right-hand side, and he looks as though he's maybe struggling to stay with this pace, and it's certainly broken up the pack since the last time that we had a look at them.
Right in the middle of the pack there is Abdallah Mande of Uganda, the 23-year-old. He's run 2 halves this year, was 4th in Barcelona in 60 minutes back in February, and he ran a personal best in the Netherlands in March of 60:14. So some really high caliber athletes in there. Some of them are just knocking on the door of breaking 60 minutes. Back to this ladies' pack. And still looking comfortably, Joycelyn Jepkosgei. I'm intrigued to see Jepkosgei apparently having a good run, Paula, because she hasn't really hit the same heights this year that she did in 2017. You know, 2 world records last year. You look at her best this year, 66:46. That was 5th in RAK back in February, the RAK half marathon in the United Arab Emirates. Now, 66:46 is not too shabby,
no,
but it's certainly nowhere near 64:51. I mean, it's almost 2 minutes slower than her best.
Absolutely, and it's that range away from your best time, which I think is maybe concerning for her, and the fact that she's gone to races, big head-to-heads that have been built up, the likes of the Great North Run, and been quite convincingly beaten there. So she's not been getting quicker with each race as she did in 2017. She's rather been getting slower with the races. But having said that, she looks as though she's having a good run today. She's raced a lot recently. She actually raced a half marathon in Eldoret a couple of weeks ago at altitude there, and still ran 71 minutes there. So that indicates that she's put the training in, and maybe in the past she's overcooked it a little bit, and she's learned from that to back off before the races.
The athlete we're talking about, Joycelyn Jepkosgei of Kenya, right in the middle of that pack, just behind the athlete in front with the white vest. There she is, you can see her now in the middle of the pack. Fascinating young athlete. I had a long chat with her yesterday. She's a delightful young lady, really eloquent too. She said that she comes from an incredibly poor community, about 35, 40 kilometres from from E10. They've gone through 10 kilometres there, by the way, in about 31:40. So, Paula, you've got to do your maths, I know, while I'm talking and figure it out. But Joycelyn was saying that when she finishes running, she would love to set up a training centre. That's one of her ambitions in her home village of Cheptil, a very poor village. She said, well, there is so much talent, and yet the youngsters there have got no opportunity to realise that talent. She wants to build a training centre and give them the opportunity that she's had.
And I think that's absolutely the case. Here are the exact 10K splits coming up there. Gemechu leading them through there in 31:41, and that pack pretty much all through on that again now around that bend. Tirunesh Dibaba is starting to fall back a little bit more. Can she now work her way back on, or is she starting to struggle in the background there? I mean, I think getting back to Jocelyn Jepkosgei being that inspiration in Kenya, Tirunesh Dibaba is absolutely that in her home village and home area too. They're hotbeds of talent where running is the #1 sport, and I think that's the difference again between other countries.
This could be the most critical point of the race yet for the big clash that we expected between Jepkosgei and Tirunesh Dibaba. Dibaba, the world record holder at 5,000 on the track, a fierce racer all the way through the different distances to the marathon, but with that Berlin Marathon in her legs from just 5 weeks ago, has she gone to the well once too often? There is Dibaba, the baby-faced destroyer she's known as, but she is 10 metres back and she is struggling, there's no doubt about it. They're on schedule here for a time, if that 10-kilometre split is right, of 66:50. The men go past India Gate now. Remember, the men started at 10 minutes before the ladies, 43 minutes on the clock for them, and there is a break too in the men's race. Look, almost single file, and it's Belihu doing the attacking at 15 kilometres, 42:40, the men.
And that's quickly asking questions of the others in the group. You can see Kipchumba in the white vest is struggling to hang on to that and to be able to go with it. Looks like behind that, Keithley has actually allowed daylight also to open up, or not allowed to. He's been trying to maintain contact and not been able to.
Well, they are on schedule still for something under 60 minutes in this men's race. Belihu, who is doing the pushing at the moment, has broken up the pack, but Dibaba now really is struggling. Those arms beginning to flap across the body, almost flailing across the torso a little bit more as she tries to work hard and get back in the pack. And this is very tough mentally as well as physically, Paula, isn't it? When you're separated like that, when you're isolated, you're tired, the pack's moving away from you. I suppose the only mantra you can do is keep working, and hope one or two of that pack will drop away and come back to you.
Yes, you have to basically go somewhere in your head to your happy place, and just to be able to just concentrate, to stay in the moment, just maintain your rhythm, and you can come through this. Athletes go through bad patches, and if anybody is going to come through a bad patch, Tirunesh Dibaba is able to do that. So I wouldn't write her off just yet, not while she can still maintain in her sights that lead group. Once they get out of sight, it's a different question, and I think then it's mentally much harder to kind of come through that bad spot and get yourself back into a rhythm. But while she can still see them, she can still focus on the back of their vests, and she can still keep working back towards them. She's not seeing them really disappear down the road ahead of her.
So there's what, behind the male pacemaker, there's what, 6 ladies, I think, in this pack, and they are moving at about 66:30 tempo, which would suggest that that course record of Mary Keitany, 66:54, is under real threat. I can't believe all 6 of them are going to run 66:30. So there is good reason for Dibaba there in the background. You can see, what, 40 metres back, probably 50 metres back. Good reason for her to keep working.
Yes, absolutely. Good reason for her to keep maintaining the rhythm that she has and to try and get herself back into a place where she can start to work on getting closer to them.
Well, look at Belihu here and Wallalane. They have really punished this pack over the last 5 or 7 minutes and broken it down. And is that Daniel Kipchumba in 3rd place? The pre-race favourite, well, the quickest on paper anyway. He's only 20 years old, the Kenyan, in 3rd place. But this duo of Belihu, the 19-year-old Ethiopian, Wallalane, a 19-year-old Ethiopian to the right there, and Kipchumba, 20. Can you believe their average age is below 20, this trio? It is absolutely staggering. This is the new era of distance running on planet Earth, where youngsters, teenagers, can dominate world-class races at world-class timing. times and tempo. Bellahua is working hard here. Interesting, Waller Lane there to the right of the picture. He's been grimacing from long ago, about 20 minutes ago he was grimacing, wasn't he? He's working really hard.
Yeah, you can see he's really working hard. I wonder if there is a little bit of teamwork going on here. There's not a lot of love lost, if you like, between the Ethiopians and the Kenyans. They like to beat each other in races here. And we've got the two Ethiopians working together there to try and drop Kipchumba.
Significant action then in both races. Only 37 minutes on the clock in the women's race. Remember, the men have now been running for some 47 minutes. They started 10 minutes earlier. But with Tirunesh Dibaba dropping away from this women's pack, 6 in the women's pack, I think, behind the male pacemaker, and with 3 away now in the men's race. It's all happening on the streets of Delhi, in this Airtel Delhi Half Marathon of 2018. Now, is this the decisive moment, Paula, in this women's race? We're well into the third quarter of the race.
Well, I think one thing you can say with certainty is the other women in this race will absolutely be aware that Tirunesh Dibaba has disappeared off the back of the pack, and that will have given them a huge confidence boost, because when they know that they've dropped her, they really know that they're running fast and they're running well, and that they have an extreme chance of being able to win this race. So they're going to now start looking to their own tactics, looking to who else is in that pack and who they need to get dropped off their back. So the likes of Jocelyn Jepkosgei knows that she has to work hard now.
Kipchumba beginning to struggle. You can see him grimacing there in the white vest in the background. 48 minutes on the clock for this men's field. They've got about 11 minutes of hard running to come. What's that? At the speed they're moving at, about 4 kilometres. So we're at about 17 kilometres at the moment. And you're right, Paula. I mean, I think these two are working together, stride for stride. There's a nice rhythm to it, almost touching shoulders. And the women's pack beginning to break up. Jocelyn Jepkosgei working very hard to go with this male pacemaker, and I don't know if this is an acceleration from the male pacemaker that maybe Jocelyn has instigated, if she shouted something at him, but this is real pressure being applied here by the male pacemaker, indirectly, I suppose, on the rest of that group.
Possibly, yes. We don't know until we find out after the race whether she asked him to push on or whether he's just sensed that she wants the pace to pick up, and he's been able to do that. You can see him looking around now, so maybe it is instigated by him, and he's now seeing of the women who was able to go with that. Certainly it's broken them up into single file from that pack formation they were running in earlier.
Well, back to these professional races. Remember, massive prize money in the offing for these elite athletes in this women's race. They've now been running for just over 40 minutes. And Jocelyn Jepkosgei rocking from side to side in the wake of that pacemaker. Look at the gap, though, back to Kipchumba in the men's race. That is the significant break, and we're down to these two 19-year-old Ethiopians, 20-year-old Daniel Kipchumba, 59.06. He's run twice this year, 2 victories in Verbania in Italy, and then in Copenhagen on the 16th of September. Now, that was a month ago, Paula, at Copenhagen, 5 weeks ago, I think it was, in fact. Could a hard marathon still be in your legs after 5 weeks, or should you have recovered?
I think it's less likely. It's maybe the accumulation of them, but I think the other one was further apart. Certainly, if you look on their faces, it seems as though Waller Lane is working a lot harder than Kipchumba, but the evidence is there. They are breaking away. Have they made the move too soon? It's yet to be seen, but certainly that gap is growing. Each time that we come back to the race, it's getting bigger and bigger. Back to Kipchumba, and he hasn't lost a half marathon yet. He doesn't want to be beaten, so it's because he can't stay with the tempo that's been asked of him.
Well, they are accelerating. If I didn't know better, I'd say they're actually racing each other here. It looks to me like they really have turned the screw. Maybe they're aware, they've had a little glance over their shoulder, and they've seen that Kipchumba has had to let go. That sort of psychological elastic has snapped between them. They went through 18K. I got them at about 50.42 at 18K. But these two battling it out with just under 3 kilometres to go in the men's race. And in the women's race, we still have that pack, although one athlete beginning to struggle at the back, and in fact 2 athletes dropping away. Tirunesh Dibaba is now pretty much out of sight, although if she can maintain her work rate and rally, she might yet catch a couple of these stragglers.
She may, but I'm just trying to get an idea in the long shot. Maybe that's her come around the bend now. So she still does have them in the sights. And interestingly, she has another athlete to work on in the interim now to be able to get back to this group. Also, the group has bunched up a little bit, which means that the pace has possibly slowed back, which may allow other people to get back onto that group. I'm trying to see who's in there. We've got Jocelyn Jepkosgei in there. We've got Stacey Ndiwa, is that hanging on the back? And I think that's Teferi, obscured a little bit by the pacemaker.
Yeah, I think Teferi is in there. I mean, she was one of the athletes that you and I talked about earlier on this morning, wasn't it? Because, you know, she's second in the World Championships 5,000 back in 2015. We know she's got plenty of good track speed. She's a 4:01 1,500-metre run. She's got a great range. But she has that strength too, having run a pretty good marathon, 2:24, in Dubai back in January. I mean, 4:01 to 2:24. That's impressive.
Yeah, that is a big range. But I've just worked out I think the other athlete in there is Sehey Gemechu of Ethiopia, just 20, and she's making her debut at this distance, and it's going very well for her so far.
Yeah, she's only ever done 10-kilometre races on the roads, Gemechu, but she's in there. As we go back to these two men battling it out, 53 minutes on the clock for them, about 2 kilometres to go. I don't think there's much quarter being given here. They're just both working really hard. I mean, this is like a heavyweight punch-up, banging chunks out of each other, knocking chunks out of each other. I wonder who's got the speed if they're together when they make that last turn.
Absolutely. I mean, they're just testing each other. There is just 2 kilometres to go now, and they're really 1 inch ahead. The other one counters that by trying to just stick his chest a little bit further ahead. So I guess they're trying to find out how much the other one has left, but also to keep the pace moving, because they know that Kipchumba is behind them. They don't want to slack off and really just start racing each other at this point. They want to maintain the rhythm to the finish. They probably also know that they're not that far off course record.
Well, no, that's exactly right. The course record, just a quick reminder, the course record they're chasing by Gueye Adola of Ethiopia back in 2014, 4 years ago, 59.06. That might be a tall order because I had them on schedule for about 59.30, 59.40 a little while back. But they've run the last kilometre through to 19 kilometres. I got it at 2:49, give or take a second. They are really shifting still. They're working hard. You can see how quickly they've opened up that big gap on Daniel Kipchumba. I mean, he's hardly in sight now. They are flying.
Yeah, they really are, and they're picking it up. And you have to ask how much more they are able to pick up, given that they've worked very hard to blow this race apart and to get themselves away from the other athletes. But they certainly look still fresh, and that bounce of confidence is almost giving them a little bit more energy because they know that they have that buffer, and it's now just between these two for that victory.
Well, Elaine, to the right there is a huge talent, the 19-year-old. Back in March, he ran 27.37 in Laredo, Spain. Makes him the 12th fastest in the world this year for 10,000 metres on the road. And he's still only 19, let's not forget. And when you bring that speed from the track as well, he's run 13.14 for 5,000. He's run only 28 minutes flat for 10,000 on the roads. But he'll have gone through 10,000 here today, on the track rather. He'll have gone through 10,000 here today, probably in a personal best for a 10K. Now, is he just beginning to get his nose in front?
I think he is definitely trying to make Bellehou hurt earlier. He has his background in cross-country racing. He was actually second in the World Junior cross-country in 2017. So he knows how to judge his efforts and to race according to feel and to use the course, and probably also how to hurt Bellehou a little bit further out to be able to wind it up.
Well, here's a quick update on the ladies before we go back to the climax of that men's race, and it is breaking up, there's no doubt about that. Jocelyn Jepkosgei perhaps struggling, Paula.
Yeah, I think she's now starting to drop off that pack, so the male pacemaker still obscuring from view, but I think Teferi is still in there. I think we still have maybe Gemechu in there and Stacey Ndiwa. That looks as though the three, although Ndiwa is also starting to fall back now. Maybe she's going to allow Jepkosgei to latch onto her and just to be able to run with her now.
This situation, a little controversial, I must admit, with a quarter of the race to go. I sort of feel as though sometimes the male pacemaker should step off the road and let the ladies race. Maybe he will, we'll see. But this race now has Gemechu at the front. I thought he was done. But he has kicked in hard here. They're inside the last kilometre now. 56.40 on the clock. Remember the world record, 58.23 by Xerxes Tadesse of Eritrea. That was back in Lisbon, Portugal in 2010. But Bellehu here has responded to the attack from Walalane over the last 5 minutes, and he is now asking the questions. 57 minutes on the clock, and these two young Ethiopians, the pair of them, just 19 years old, are absolutely flying. Look at the other racers to the right of picture, watching them go by. It's almost as though they're standing still, and they can see world-class racing from about 3 meters away. They're tearing up the road here.
Yeah, and I think when they're stood that close to it, they can really appreciate just how fast these men are racing. Maybe the pictures don't always do it justice, but they are really taking this race to the wire. I think Bellehu there was just doing a little test to see if I pick it up, is Walalane able to go with that, or does a small gap open up? Because if it does, then I'm going to push again, and he's going to do a couple of those before he really goes for real.
Well, Bellehu in the ascendancy at the moment. He's got really good 10k speed as well on the roads. He won Ottawa 10 kilometres back in May in Canada in 27:48, and he now has in his slipstream Amdawat Walalane, his compatriot. The gap is beginning to grow as they sidestep that red carpeting section. But has Walalane had to let go here? The gap is growing. It's 3 or 4 meters. And Bellehu may not have glanced round, but I'm sure he will be aware, Paula, sort of almost instinctively aware that he's got that little gap on his compatriot.
Yes, you shouldn't need to glance around. He should be able to sense almost and to hear how close Walalane is to him. He will have been able to look across, and his face is a little bit deceptive, as you said. He's looked as though he's working really this hard from pretty much the beginning of this race. But now it looks as though in his cadence as well, it's dropped a little bit. He's struggling to be able to go with this move by Bellehu, but it's hurting Bellehu too.
It is Bellehu who is really hurting. Takes one of the last corners as he heads in toward the stadium. The fastest time in the world this year, 58:42 by Bidan Karoki of Kenya. That was in the Rack Half Marathon back in February. We're not going to see a world best for this year, but we are going to see a mighty quick time. Remember the course record, 59:06 by Gia Adola, is just a few seconds away. I think that's going to survive for another year, but this is going to be massively fast. 9 years out of the last 10, we've had sub-60-minute clockings here in Delhi, and this looks like it's going to be another sub-60 clocking, because the winner is going to be Amdamlat Bellehu as he comes towards the line, acknowledges the applause for this 14th edition of the Airtel Delhi Half Marathon. He is champion. It's a 1-2 for Ethiopia, and that was fast. 59:20 unofficially, there or thereabouts for Bellehu, and brilliant running from him. A new personal best by some 30 seconds. Walalane as well will have smashed his personal best by about 25 seconds. That was some race.
That was a really, really great race. I think now we're looking at Kipchumba battling in ahead of Kifle there, and these two men have also run sub-60. They've also run very, very quick times, but have not been able to stay with Bellehu and Walalane today.
Well, let's go back to the women's race where it's all happening as well. And we are gradually seeing this pack thinning out. Teferi, though, doesn't she look comfortable? Shades of Mo Farah in Chicago a couple of weeks back, because she looks relaxed, for my money, Paula. I suppose that's the most apt word for the way she's looked. Little casual glance at her watch there. She doesn't really look under stress at all.
No, she doesn't. She always runs like that, but she looks very, very relaxed and in control here. Interestingly, Jepkosgei has rallied. She's got herself back into that group of now 3 that's away. That includes Gemechu, who's having the run of, or the debut of her life. But Teferi is very much in the slipstream of the male pacemaker, and she's the one who is now kind of nipping at his heels, urging him on to go faster. And maybe, as you said, now is the time for him to step aside and allow these women to race, because she looks as though she wants to maintain the momentum that is hurting Jepkosgei and be able to move quicker than she is almost able to do, because she's kind of sticking behind the pacemaker.
Well, Teferi, making her debut, looks the most likely to win. 51 minutes on the clock. We mustn't forget they've still probably got another 15 minutes of running to come, so several acts to unfold. But Senberi Teferi, she's an 8:32 3,000 metre runner. Set that personal best when she was second in the Continental Cup just a few weeks ago in Ostrava in the Czech Republic. And the pacemaker here with Teferi tucked in behind him. And who was that in second place? There's that Gemechu.
That's Gemechu, yes.
And she's another athlete making her debut. She's just 20 years old, only ever run 10-kilometre races on the road. She has a personal best of 31:07. That was in Tilburg in the Netherlands on the 2nd of September, so we know she's in great shape. But, you know, there is a world of difference between 10K on the roads and the half marathon. Maybe not as big a difference as between the half marathon and the marathon, but you know full well, you know, twice the distance and more.
Yes, and I think that can make, maybe for a painful experience in the half marathon, but they can absolutely run well. And I think for the likes of Teferi, when you've raced well on the track all summer, and then you've got a little bit of a gap to build up for a half marathon, you can produce an outstanding performance.
Well, the Indian men coming to the climax of their race as well. They've been out there now for 62 minutes 20, there or thereabouts. And as ever, this domestics dust-up looking very, very tight indeed. Is that 4 or 5 athletes winding it up inside the last kilometre now? Remember, the Indian record in the men's event is 63.44 by Bugata Srinu. That was set in Bhopal back in 2016. 63.44. And Sablé it is who is doing the pushing. Gopi T. Had a chat with him a couple of days ago at the press conference, said he's in very good shape. He's hoping to get back to something like his best form in this race, and he would appear to be doing just that because he is going strongly. Looks relaxed in the blue vest for my money, and it's always nice, isn't it, to be sitting on the shoulder of somebody. Well, this is a big break. Teferi has pushed on, Paula. She looked relaxed a few minutes ago, and she's got that gap now on Gemechu, her compatriot. It's a day for the Ethiopians, isn't it?
It is, and we did say she looked as though she was champing at the bit a little bit, wanting to get the pace moving on and to capitalise on the damage that she was already doing to the other women. And now she seems as though she's moving further and further away from the pack, from the others.
Back to the Indian men then, and it's Pal against Gopi. Look at this, 200 metres to go. They're sprinting absolutely flat out now. On the clock, we have 63.51. They're going to be just outside 64 minutes, but Pal it is, who's just eased away from Gopi. It doesn't look like he's got any sprint left. Sablé back in 3rd place. Fierce racing this between the Indians, and good prize money, remember, for the domestic dust-up amongst these men. Who's going to get it? Racing to the tape. Not the controversy of last year when there was contact on the line, but the win there is for Pal, ahead of Sablé and Gopi T, I think, finishing in 3rd place. Well, that was some run from Abhishek Pal. Yeah, delighted there with that win. Bragging rights go to him. First Indian man, then Abhishek Pal, just outside 64 minutes. And back to this ladies' race where the debutante Teferi, just 23 years old, was second in the Great South Run, a 10-miler in the south of England a couple of years ago in 52.51.
I think the pace that she's run at over 5 kilometres, as we've talked about, that 14:23 indicates that she had this potential over the half marathon. We'll see as we get closer just how fast she can go, because I think she can go quicker than this. She really kept her powder dry in the first half of this race, and then she has moved through now only in the closing stages when she knows with confidence that she can maintain this to the finish. And I don't think there's any coming back now for the women behind them. There might be some changes in position there.
Well, what's interesting is that Gemechu in 2nd place is being closed down by Joycelyn Jepkosgei, the world record holder. So there is a battle going on for 2nd place. But yes, Teferi here looking absolutely supreme, very smooth, untroubled. And this is quite some debut. It's going to be a quick debut too, isn't it?
I think it is, yeah. And I think we have seen this from Jepkosgei before in the World Half Marathon Championships in Valencia. She dropped back and then she actually rallied and was able to move back through the field and move up. So don't write her off yet, but certainly she looks a lot more tired than Teferi does.
There's that battle for 2nd and 3rd place, and indeed for 4th and 5th place, or is it? That's Yima. And who is that?
And
back in
Ndiwa,
5th
Yima and
place?
Stacey Ndiwa, who's really paying the price now for having tried to go with that quartet, as it were, a couple of kilometres ago, and she looks as though she's really struggling. Yima looks as though she's stronger, but I don't think she's going to make up any ground back on these two.
And Dima there, back in 5th place, extreme left of picture, is heading for a massive personal best. Her personal best is 69.09. This is the battle for 2nd and 3rd. To the left, in the white vest, is the world record holder, Joycelyn Jepkosgei. 64.51. Say hi there in second place in the blue, now just being passed by Jepkosgei. Sehai Gemechu is just a 20-year-old Ethiopian, but Jepkosgei here, maybe pride forcing her on, Paula, at this stage. Sometimes it's almost mind over matter with a few minutes to go.
I think it is, and you can see her eyes are focused on the race in front. It's almost like she's running a bit like a boxer. She's almost punching the air ahead of her with each stride. She really knows how to push her body on to get the most from it, and she will be focused on Teferi in front of her and on trying to make up that gap. So any sign of weakness from Teferi, she will capitalise on that. Having said that, I didn't see Teferi showing many signs of weakness.
Absolutely right, Gautam. Absolutely right. The male pacemaker there in blue, not really playing any part in the race now, at least not a part that he should be playing. And you can see Teferi there maybe has had a glance over her shoulder, Paula, in the pink vest, seeing that she's got that gap of 50 or 60 metres and thinks she's safe. What, 59 minutes on the clock. They've got about 7 or 8 minutes of running to come. But is Jepkosgei rallying in the background?
I think it looks as though she is a little bit. Certainly she's working together with Gemechu, Sehai Gemechu behind, and another look behind from Teferi there. I would say that's not quite a winning gap yet. She looks a little bit concerned. That's a little bit too many signs of weakness, if you like, that she's throwing back to the chasing girls behind. When you keep looking repeatedly back over your shoulder, it's not just let's see what's happening, it's are they closing on me? And that does give strength to you when you're chasing someone down and you see them repeatedly look back over their shoulder.
For the first time, she looks like she's really working hard here, doesn't she? The arms are beginning to flail a little bit harder. There's not quite the same smooth serenity to her stride, but she's got this male pacemaker to key off, and he's sort of almost dragging her through when the battle is going on behind to try and catch her. Although that gap is now growing a little bit. 19 kilometres there with what on the clock? Almost exactly 60 minutes, about 60:02 at 19 kilometres. And Teferi, who looks like she's heading for victory with a battle going on behind her between Joycelyn Jepkosgei and Sehai Gemechu, the 20-year-old Ethiopian. Hasn't yet got the win in the bag. I mean, what, 60 minutes on the clock, Paula? She's got about 6 minutes of running to come.
Yeah, I don't think it's yet in the bag. The gap is almost significant. It's more for me the way that she keeps looking behind and the way that strain is starting to show on her face. And she doesn't have, as we've talked about, a wealth of experience over the half marathon. She may have misjudged it.
But of course, we've got the Indian women as well. We need to keep a track of them. The elite women are going to finish, but what about the Indian women?
Parul there, now in the front, the taller figure of these two and looking strong. Second last year in this Indian women's race, and she won't want to finish second again. So maybe a little bit more determination in her legs because of that. In fact, she was third last year. So two-woman race throughout, it would seem, in this Indian women's contest. 62 minutes on the clock. And let's not forget that Indian women's record is in the offing. Well, Jepkosgei with Gemechu. And she is working hard, Jepkosgei, isn't she? I mean, she looks heavy compared with all of them, Paula. As you said earlier, it's power as well. That when she's really, really in good shape, winning shape, can be applied over the half marathon distance. But when she's not running strongly, when she's not feeling great, then she does look heavy.
She does. Interestingly now, the pacemaker is back just in front of them. So I'm wondering if in the background that isn't Teferi. Have we seen a change while we've been away?
Teferi has got to be out in front. I'm not entirely clear why the pacemaker would have dropped back to them so suddenly, so quickly. But Parul, in the blue, doing the hard work here in the Indian women's contest, trying to break the athlete behind her. But it's going to be tough because it's so much easier to be hanging on to the back of an athlete. Psychologically, they're doing the hard work. If you can just tuck in behind them and let them do the hard work, do the leading, it takes a little bit of the burden off your shoulders. A bit like in a relay, if you ever run a relay for your club, Paula, in a 4x400 with a baton in your hand. And,
I have.
It's great to come off that final turn on somebody's shoulder. Jepkosgei just cannot rid herself here of Gemechu, stubbornly hanging on to her, the 20-year-old Ethiopian in the blue. This is the battle for second and third. Teferi, we believe, is about 60 metres out in front. and certainly for the last 3 or 4 kilometres has looked like she's got the win in the bag. But it would be nice to be able to see Teferi and where she is in relation to this duo. Jepkoska, remember, the world record holder, now being passed by Gemechu. There is no quarter being given here.
No, and they've got to be in the very, very closing stages of the race now. Gemechu moving slightly ahead. Maybe she sensed that Jepkoska didn't have anything left to fight. She's fought, and she's fought again. Jepkoska, she's kept finding something else to be able to go with this. And now it's Gemechu who is really pushing on the pace.
Jepkoska has got to be hurting. Well, this is Teferi being passed. You're right, Paula. Teferi absolutely has collapsed. Crikey. Talk about hitting in the wall, throwing in the towel. She looked so comfortable a couple of minutes ago. These two have rocketed past her. I cannot believe it. This was just a couple of minutes ago, and this is now the race for the win. Talk about a dramatic change with just a few hundred metres to go.
I know, hugely dramatic. And in the midst of all that, Gemechu, the debutant, times her race to perfection, and she's still checking her watch. I don't know what time she's trying to beat unless she senses that she has maybe the course record in her sights. That's 400 metres to go, so she's got what, 75 seconds or so to break that record. So it's possible. She's certainly working hard, and with each stride now she is drawing further and further away from Jepkoska, and that's Ymer as well, who's closing in the background. So really Teferi has almost stepped aside in this race.
Well, Teferi all but stopped, didn't she, when we saw that clip just now that was a couple of minutes old. But the male pacemaker here, it seems determined to run his race and get a time, even though it's Gemechu, Sehai Gemechu, who takes that final turn, 66 minutes on the clock. Remember the course record from Merah Keitany, 66.54. That's under real threat here today in Delhi. Gemechu running for victory here. In the finishing straight almost, one turn to make. And Joycelyn Jepkosgei, the world record holder, back in second place, top left of your picture. There she is in the white vest. But the foreshortening effect is deceptive. I don't think she's going to get back to the Ethiopian in the lead, who now sprints towards the tape. And it is indeed going to be a course record here. The 14th edition of the Airtel Delhi Half Marathon in 2018 has a new course record and a new champion in the women's race. Sehai Gemechu, the 20-year-old Ethiopian. What a debut from her. Fabulous stuff. Unofficially there around 66.50. I got her winning time. And that would make it a course record by just a few seconds, as Joycelyn Jepkosgei has to settle for second place. She did rally well. She worked very, very hard. When you think Jepkosgei was some way back at about 15, 16 kilometres. The first three in the women's elite race then. Sehai Gemechu there in the middle in the blue is the champion in a new course record. Joycelyn Jepkosgei to the left, the world record holder, second here today. That underlines the calibre of this race. And Ymer there, a fabulous third place for the 20-year-old Ethiopian, who has come very close to her personal best, if not broken it. We await the confirmation of those times. But Jepkosgei just managing to split. Well, the Indian women's record is 70.31 by Loganathan Surya in Delhi last year, 70.31. So that is not going to be under threat here today. It is nonetheless a great tussle between these two. Parul now just beginning to swing those arms backwards and forwards with slightly more energy, trying to lengthen her stride and destroy the athlete behind her. But is she going to manage it? Because there is stubborn attachment going on from Sanjivani Yadav in second place, who has looked under pressure. But is she looking the better of the two, Paula?
She still looks under pressure now, but she's also sensed that if I've hung on for this long and now I hit the final 200 metres, I can really give it one last go, and now she moves ahead.
She does hit the front for the first time. She's played a very, very cagey game. She wasn't worried about the time, clearly. She looks much the more sprightly of these two Indian ladies. Sanjivani Yadav is going to take this one. There's no doubt about it. At the age of, what, 22, she is taking the biggest win of her young life here. Look at the time on the clock. It's going to be just inside 74 minutes, I think. The time immaterial, a victory massively significant. This, again, is a huge step forward in her young career. She's the Indian champion in 2018 in Delhi. And Parul, after all that hard work, crosses the line just 10 metres or so down, but had to give best to her compatriot, and her slightly younger compatriot at that. Well, time for the presentations to get underway now. The elite men are ready to receive their prizes, their medals, their checks. $280,000 makes this the richest half marathon in the world. And the first three in the elite men's race share $60,000, $27,000 to the winner of the men's race. And what a race it was, of course. Belehu was the winner in a time of unofficially 59:20. And Damlak Belehu 59:20, Valilein in second, and Kipchumba in third place. But, well, let's have a look at the results of that Indian men's contest. 64:14, the winning time for Abhishek Pal with Avinash Sable. 64:14 as well. They crossed the line so close together. Gopi Teague, Gopi Tanakal, 64:15. He was breathing down their necks in third place. And as you can see, the first 6 men under 65 minutes. Good packing from the Indian men there, and that does suggest the strength in depth and the standard is improving. Let's have a look at the result of that Indian women's race. And a good packing in the men's race, and again in the women's race as well. The first 4 getting under 1 hour 20 minutes there. The winning time 1 hour 13:58 for Sanjivani Yadav from Parul. That sprint taking her 3 seconds clear from Chowdhury, with Athari there in third place, 1 hour 16 minutes and 55 seconds.